you all again for joining us. It's exciting to have you here. My name is Brandon Boyd. I am your host. I'm a Tech alum, and I am the director for the Crawford Alumni Center. The Crawford Alumni Center is headquartered in the old Varsity Cinema in the Varsity building on the south end of campus. I'm joined today with other staff members from the Center of Career Development, also the Crawford Alumni Center, and I'd like to highlight them now. So first we have Sonia Higginbotham. She's the Assistant Director for Center for Career Development, and also our lovely moderator today. If you have any questions that you'd like to be asked on your behalf, please put those in the chat, and Sonia will make sure that we get those asked. If we happen to run out of time today, please email the Center for Career Development at career@tntech.edu, and we can get to those later, or they can get to those later. Sorry, I don't want to speak on their behalf. But we also have the Assistant Director for the Crawford Alumni Center, Kelly Chambers, is with us today. Also, the Events Coordinator for the Crawford Alumni Center, Brooke Fleenor, is with us today. And Administrative Associate for the Crawford Alumni Center, Margot Dirkson's with us today. Folks, we're here for you, for Tech alumni, both the Center for Career Development and the Crawford Alumni Center. So we welcome you to reach out to either shop, either office, anytime. The email for alumni is alumni@tntech.edu. And Sonia, thank you for putting that information in the chat feature. You'll find the chat feature at the bottom tray of your Zoom settings there. It looks like a little quote bubble you'd see from a comic book. You can turn that on and the thread would be showing on your Zoom at all times, or you can pop that off and just open it when you like. The Center for Career Development provides a variety of services, resources, and events for Tech alumni. Whether you're a recent grad in need of career assistance, and an employed alumnus interested in recruiting for your organization, or a proud graduate just ready to share a great professional story, the Center for Career Development is here for you and welcomes your engagement. It's now my privilege to introduce Russ Coughenour. Russ has been directing career service offices, for the past 25 years, and has been the director for the Center for Career Development at Tennessee Tech since October of 2018. His career has taken him to Augusta State University, the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and the University of South Florida. Russ is a former chapter president for the Society for Human Resources Management, and most recently was the president of the State University System of Florida Career Center Directors. Russ's passion is assisting college students with their career development, especially in the area of preparing for job research and interviews. Each month, Russ contributes a blog to the Alumnus e-newsletter that the Crawford Alumni Center puts out for Tech alumni that gives career advice, resume suggestions, interview tips, and such. This month's blog is live, so thank you again for joining us for our first ever Career Corner Live. We're all here because we know that more than 36 million unemployment claims have been filed in 2020. Most signs indicate that the economy is ready to reopen. Though it may look different, it could be just as good for employment. Today, Russ is here to answer questions and give advice and tips for those seeking employment or considering changes in careers midst of a pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Russ Coughenour.
Hey, Brandon, thank you a lot, man. I didn't realize I'd done all that stuff. I need to brush up my resume a little bit. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of anxiety, I think, out in the market. And so I think colleges and universities, really from across the country, are trying to figure out, how do we help our alumni? How do we help people that just graduated in the class of May 2020? How do we help those people get through the anxiety that the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of thrust upon the job market? It is a little different. A lot of the advice we're going to give about finding a job or re-energizing your job search is really going to be kind of similar to how it would be if there wasn't a COVID-19 pandemic. But still, we felt it was necessary to partner with the Crawford Alumni Association to come on and answer questions. And we want this to be casual. We want this to be informative, but kind of a laid back sort of meeting where the alumni can ask questions. And we'll do our best to try to answer them. Maybe not every question can be answered in this format, but we hope to leave you with some resources going forward that you can follow up or feel more comfortable maybe about connecting with us and asking those questions. And we'll work hard to get the right answers for you. So with that said, there's a lot of folks logged in, it seems like. Did anybody come to this event with a question, something that they purposefully wanted to ask as they were logged on? Okay. Yeah, so we have from Dr. Cook to everyone. Yes, I have one. Go ahead, please ask. Okay, I'm still not getting the question from Dr. Cook. Sonia, can you see that? Here we go. Can everyone see the question that Borja asked? Okay. Yeah, so the question is from Borja, who is asking about entering as an adjunct professor, and has some age questions. And I think the age question is a very pertinent question for people who are trying to enter the market after some period of time. And I think that the advice that I would give somebody who is 71 years old is that you're going to have to be extremely flexible and geographically flexible. And I think you're going to have to be very, very flexible with the types of institutions that you're applying to. The wider the net that you can possibly cast, the better off that you're going to be. Now, again, everybody brings a different set of geographic restrictions to a job search. And so, Borja, I don't know where you are with that. I don't know if you must stay within a geographic area or whether you have the ability to go wherever a job opportunity might take you. I think the other thing, he is saying I'm living in Columbia. So are you looking for opportunities in Columbia exclusively? Okay, well then I can't really say that I'm an expert on getting positions as an adjunct professor in Columbia, but I think the thing that you do is to try not to draw any unnecessary attention to your age, and draw necessary attention to your skill sets and what you bring to the table. And especially if you were applying to schools that, at least in American terms, we would call it non-traditionals, where instead of teaching to all 22-year-olds, you would be targeting institutions that have significant adult populations. And because I think the whole thing is your credibility to the employer as you approach the workplace. You've got vast levels of experience, I believe. My sense would be you've been a teacher for a while, and that you're just looking for a new or different opportunity. Maybe you bring corporate or worldly experience into the classroom. So I think those are the things you sell. You kind of sell the positives and sort of diminish any of the negatives. You're approaching the job search as if you weren't 71 years old. I think that's really the good advice, is that you still have energy, you still have drive, you still have ambition, and you still have something to contribute to the classroom. And that's the way I would approach that. And always the good advice is apply, 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 apply. It's really kind of a numbers game. And that would probably be the advice I would share with you.
Russ, I believe that Dr. Cook specifically
Okay.
had the question regarding adjunct positions and what she could do as far as looking for an adjunct position.
Well, I think you first of all, you have to find out where those adjunct positions are being advertised. And I know that we have on the handshake system at Tennessee Tech, we do have adjunct positions from time to time, although, it's not really the bread and butter that's going to be on the handshake system. I think if I was looking for an adjunct teaching position at a community college or at a four-year institution or something like that, I mean, I would be zeroing in on their websites. I would be, or trying to find an aggregator like an Indeed or a Monster or a Career Builder that I know is aggregating jobs from the colleges and universities that I would be interested in. It's kind of hard to know that without going out and surfing those sites to see if you're coming up with adjunct positions. But it seems to me like to do a keyword search or a search on adjunct professor, it wouldn't take you very long to figure out where those jobs are being advertised. And so I think, first and foremost, I think you have to find them. And then I think, secondly, you have to stay diligent with applying for the positions. Too many people, I think, look for positions and they let one little thing in the job description throw them off. Like they've got 9 of the skills that the job is looking for, but they don't have that 10th skill, and so they just don't apply. And I would encourage you, our office would encourage you, that if you've got about 75% of the skill set that the employer is looking for, go ahead and apply, because you have no idea who's in the candidate pool. Your 75% of the skill sets may be higher than anybody else that's currently applied. So that would be my advice there. You got to figure out where those adjunct professor positions are being advertised, and for the most part, I know schools are going to, especially public schools, are going to put them on their websites for people to see. It's mandated to them to do that. You bet. What else? Matt, did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question. I was trying to help with, I think, Borgia's question about adjunct professor in the Columbia area. Is he talking about Columbia, Tennessee or Columbia, South Carolina?
I was thinking Columbia, the country, but I don't know that. He might be thinking Columbia, Tennessee.
Yeah, if it's Columbia, Tennessee, obviously you want to look for, I would go with your comment on that, look for local community colleges where he's going to be able to be a professor for people that are not just 20 years old, where he can interact with people who are going to be a little bit older, people coming back looking for a degree after they've had some professional experience. I definitely agree with that point. So yeah, there you go, Columbia, South America.
Yeah.
No, I did not have
questions. So what else? What other questions do we have? One of the things that I decided to do for today's presentation was I asked TTU alumni Bethany Beatty to be on board with us, and wasn't sure Bethany was going to be able to make it, but she logged on and came on board. Bethany does recruiting for Enterprise Holdings Incorporated, and has always got her finger on the pulse of recruiting, mostly, but maybe not exclusively, from the collegiate market. And Bethany, it's good to see you. How are things going with Enterprise?
Good. It's a unique time. I know everyone keeps using the phrase unprecedented, but we're looking at ways that we can change how we do our business, but not just do our business with our customers coming into our locations, but also our customers with colleges, other companies that use us, my employees that I have, you know, ways that we can continue training without it being face to face. So it's interesting, some of the changes we're making.
Mm-hmm. You know, we just got a question in from Kristen, who says she just recently graduated and she doesn't have any experience in her field. And so, you know, what should she do? And you know, that's kind of, in a funny kind of way, that's kind of college graduate 101 right there. It's very common. Kristen, first of all, you're not an exception. You're pretty much in the majority. And so I would question, you know, what experience do you have? You said you didn't have any experience in your field, so your field would be important to know. What did you major in? And then, of course, you know, what other work experiences, volunteer experiences, what kind of work, what kind of on-campus experience did you get? Were you active in clubs or organizations or professional groups or things like that? Where a good resume writer, a good job coach can help you learn how to turn some of those experiences into almost job-like experiences where you can talk about skills like leadership and initiative and organizational skills. So Kristen is saying to everyone that she's a computer science major, and that's you know, a great major to have. There's probably an opportunity out there. My sense would be there's an opportunity out there on Handshake for you right now. But Kristen, you would be a person that I would love to sit down with or meet with over a Zoom conference to talk with you about what your strategy is for finding employment going forward. There's a lot of people looking for folks in your field. Some of them expect a little bit of experience. Some of them expect quite a bit of experience. Others are willing to take a look at people at the true entry level. So we would want to make sure that whatever skills you bring to the computer science arena, we would want to make sure that those are displayed, you know, loud and clear and on your resume and in full view of anybody that gets a hold of your resume. I would highly encourage you to be active on Handshake and make sure that your profile is completely filled out. And by completely, I mean all of the fields that have to do with the industries you're looking to get into, your major field of study, your skill sets that you bring to the table, the type of occupations that you're looking for. Make sure those things are completely filled out, because I can promise you there are talent acquisition people across the country that brush up against the TTU Handshake site that are looking for people in computer science fields. Yeah, and Kristen is saying, you know, that she's included it. I think loading your resume, making sure that your resume, if you haven't had your resume professionally critiqued, that's something that our office can do for you very quickly, actually. And we just want to make sure that you know, we're kind of ringing every skill set and every experience that you've had while you've been in college. We're wanting to make sure that that's upfront and visible to an employer. We've all heard the stories about how little time an employer spends on a resume. And I think that the very first time they look at it, that's true. And what you want to do is make sure that they put you in the good pile to where they're going to take a look at your resume a little bit more in depth after that. So we have to really make sure that we grab their attention when they first look at it. And I think there's a bit of a black art to that. I don't think that's necessarily something that comes natural to people who don't write resumes for a living. So we would be more than happy to help you with that. I think I might have missed a question that came in. Sonia, did you send me something?
Oh, no, I was just typing in chat that anyone on the call today that would be interested in our office reviewing their resume to email it to us at our career email. and then it'll be forwarded to a professional staff member.
Yes, yes, we've been doing an awful lot of resume reviews over the last couple months, and you know, and just to get maybe some things kickstarted. Sometimes, you know, people, you know, they come to me and they ask, you know, well, what do I need to do? You know, I'm either stagnating in my job, or maybe I've been, you know, left off, or laid off, or you know, I'm just looking for something new. And I think foundationally, I think searching for a job is kind of like building a house. You know, you've got to get the substructure laid perfectly. You've got to get your marketing documents. You know, you've got to get your resume in order. And I've seen very few resumes in the past couple of years that I thought were absolutely 100% ready to go. Even resumes that come through our doors that look pretty good, that the writer has done a good job, still miss little things, little marketing tricks that we can help with to further enhance your resume, to make sure that you're in the best place you can be. You're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to spend a lot of time applying for positions, and you really need to make sure that resume is working for you and not against you, so you don't waste that time in you know, applying for the positions. Bethany, how quickly does a bad resume, how far does a bad resume go at Enterprise?
Oh, that's kind of a tricky question. Not very far typically. But again, you know, I look for entry level employees and candidates. So sometimes they don't have the best resume. So it's sometimes hard to pick out the pieces of their resume that I think could translate to what we do. You know, for Kristen, volunteering, leadership abilities, work experience, but sometimes it's hard. You know, I graduated college and had zero work experience. And so finding a job was difficult. So really kind of focusing in on those attributes on a resume. But a bad resume, you're going to get tossed out very quickly.
Yeah. And I'm glad to see that you mentioned to Kristen that waitressing is a great way to pick up skills, because so many times we deal with people that don't have experience in their field, and they're almost reluctant to stress the work that they did. And really what we like to do is, I like to ask people who have worked in the service industry extremely specific questions about what they did, because typically they broad brush their responsibilities on the job. And when you ask probing questions of those candidates, typically you find out their job was way more responsible than how they are portraying it on their resume. And so that's why it's important for anybody on this call, whether you have related experience or not, that's why it's important to probably have somebody who's in the resume writing business, job coaching business, to glance over your resume and provide you with advice. It's very, very important. So what else? What other questions are out there? Okay, yeah. So to further on with where I was going, you typically start out with, you know, getting your resume on solid footing. It always helps to know the types of positions, the career fields, the occupations that you're wanting to get into, and research those thoroughly. Know exactly what it is that you're wanting to do as best you possibly can. And then add geography to that. I always, you know, there's all kinds of people that we deal with from TTU and people that I've dealt with throughout my life. And typically they fall into the category of, you know, I really must stay in this X geographic region. And then, you know, the second kind of person says, well, you know, I must stay within a, you know, 250-mile radius of X geographic region. And then typically you have the other people that say, hey, I'll go anywhere to find an opportunity that's going to get me experience in the field. And so that's always good to share with a person who's trying to help you find employment. You know know exactly what it is, what you want to do, how your skills match up with what you want to do, how you're uniquely prepared. What are your differentiators when a person would compare you against the candidates that you're going to be up against? You know, what separates you skill-wise? And then where are you going to launch your search? You have to put structure to a job search. You have to have a plan each day. Start at 8 o'clock every morning. You know, they say most people who write books about job search are going to tell you that you know, finding a job is a full-time job, and that you should approach it in that way. And so at 8 a.m. you get up, and some people will even tell you to put on your business casual work clothes and to address the day as if you were going to work. And you start with applying for positions, or networking on LinkedIn, or adding contacts on LinkedIn, or reaching out to people in your career field to ask for informational interviews, apply for positions. It is a full-time job, and anybody who's recently filled out online applications with corporations know that that's not a couple of clicks and you're done. I mean, that's a fairly extensive process. So then keeping good records about where you've applied and when. One of the classic problems we've run into is a student or an alumni will be very motivated at first, and what they'll do is they'll apply for 2 jobs and then they'll just stop. And they'll say, well, I'm not going to apply it anymore until I hear back from these. And that's mistake number 1. Once you've applied to 2 jobs, your goal should be then to apply for 2 to 3 more. And then by the end of the week, maybe apply for another 2 or 3 jobs. Because what happens is you don't want to get down the road and have the first 2 jobs that you applied for turn you down, and then you have nothing. Then it feels like, oh my gosh, I've got to start my job search all over again. However, if you do it the other way around and you've applied for multiple jobs over a week or 2-week period, if the first 2 turn you down, you can say, well, I still have 5 or 6 applications out there. And as long as you can keep 5 or 6 applications out there, you always, at least to yourself, you have this sense of what comes next. I've still got some things out there. I still have something to look forward to and to prepare forward. And so I always give that advice to people in the job market to don't apply to 2 jobs and then just stop and wait to hear back from them. Keep it active. You got to keep your foot on the accelerator and keep applying. And all during this time that you're searching for employment, you really should be reading. You should be reading books, and there's thousands of them out there that talk about being in the job market. And the more you read about it, the more you'll understand that it is a job to find a job. And you get tips and tricks, and different authors provide you different angles on finding employment, and little tips and tidbits about what you should be doing. And I think it's motivating when you read something like that before you go to bed at night. And then you get up and you're somewhat wanting to put some of those things into place. And then, of course, you have to practice your interview skills. Nowadays we're all gonna have to start practicing our interviewing skills online, and what it's like to go through an online interview. Bethany, you guys do that, don't you?
Yes, we do.
What are the mistakes you see people making on online interviews?
One of the biggest mistakes I've seen is people not kind of practicing with the link first to make sure that the link works, that they have the necessary software downloaded. There's been a lot of times where the interview is supposed to start at 1, and then 1:05 I'll get an email that they're having problems downloading it. So that would be number 1. And then I think the second one is playing around with your camera and the setting and what's behind you. There's been a few times that I've done interviews and all I can see is their mouth, because maybe they're doing it on their phone and they're holding it so close, or they're in front of a window, so their face is really dark. I can't see their face or any of their facial expressions. All I can see is just the light. So I think practicing with it, if you know you're going to have a Zoom call, have Zoom downloaded already, have an account, schedule a Zoom call with a friend or a family member or somebody from your college, and just practice that way. Make sure that everything looks good, you look professional, it's quiet, and you have good lighting.
And I just,
Margot, excuse me. Margot had asked a question. I was waiting for a good time to jump in.
yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, that's okay. She said, do you think it's a good time for people to change their career or stay in the market where they currently have the most experience?
Well, that's a kind of a hard question to answer. I think here in the next couple months, I think the market has the potential to get really good. And I think when the market is really good, see, there's a lot of people that have trimmed their staff, over the past 2 months. And so what that means is as things pick back up, if they do, and I think they will, I'm knocking on wood, I hope they do. But as they pick back up, then people are going to want to add back to their staffs. And so, if a person is kind of in a position where they feel like they're stagnating, they're not being used, they don't feel like they have any upward growth potential, then the time very well may be right. It really just depends. That's kind of a question that is I like to work with a person one-on-one with that kind of thing, and to develop a strategy. A lot of it has to depend on, they say people are either running from a job or running to a job, and you got to kind of figure out which one of those you're in. Good question, though. I think the market is going to be really good here before long.
Julie has a question. She says she is 62 years old with an education degree and finds herself back in the job market. What other careers would you suggest that an education degree could be useful for?
Well, I think an education degree, there's a couple ways to look at that. Most employers today now are looking for somebody who's achieved at the level of a bachelor's degree. And many times they're not too hung up on exactly what it was that you majored in. Part of your question is, are you willing to return to the classroom, or are you looking for something completely different? And, if I was looking for something completely different and I had a degree in education, I would look for occupations or things that I could do that would take advantage of all of the skill sets that I've learned as a teacher, going through going through my career. I've probably learned high levels of organization. I'm probably a great communicator. I'm a good educator, probably. So I would probably make a good trainer, a person who can train other people to do things. Every teacher I've ever known, unfortunately for me, was a person who stressed policies and rules and procedures and things like that. So my sense is any environment that has that as a core, following plans, following directions, anything like that, enforcing rules. My sense would be that those would be great occupations. Teachers oftentimes work well in service industry jobs. I would think that retail would be a good place to work. I think teachers are natural helpers, so they gravitate well towards the helping profession. So anything where you feel like, I would even say, this will sound really strange, but I even think things like working in the insurance industry or things like that, where I've always, a lot of times, insurance companies and insurance organizations sometimes have trouble attracting people. And most of the time it's because people think that every job in working for an insurance company is in sales, and it's not. Not all jobs with an insurance company are in sales. So I think there's a lot of different things that a teacher educator with experience could do. I think it's just all dependent upon your approach, and picking an industry that you want to get into because you've researched it, and then modifying, morphing your resume into something that will be convincing and add credibility to what you're applying for.
Right. So Carol has a question regarding what do you see as the current protocol on sending thank you letters or emails to a hiring manager after an interview, even virtual interview?
So, okay, would you say that one again, Sonia? I'm sorry.
Carol had a question on what the current protocol would be on sending a thank you to a hiring manager or, someone at the conclusion of an interview, even a virtual interview.
Yeah, well, there's still a lot of, difference of opinion on that. I think the key is to get it back to them quickly. Generally speaking, people are going to tell you within 24 hours, you probably should have something back to the employer. And, I think that's one way to look at it. I think, as long as you do it quickly to where the person doesn't have to go back through their, maybe their interview log and figure out exactly who you were, I think you're in pretty good shape. As far as the way you do it, it's all over the board. I've always preferred to, there's people that say you should still, handwrite it and put it in an envelope and send it. And then other people say it's okay to just send an email to thank them. I always prefer to put the thank you in business letter form in a Word document and attach it to an email where, I say something like, please see the attached thank you for our conversation last Tuesday. Greatly appreciated the time. And then when they open the letter up, it's following business format, and it's a more formal kind of document. And I've never had any complaints with that, but there's all kinds of different ways of doing it. Some companies have a very formal approach to things. Other companies are a lot more laid back, and so a little bit depends on probably who you're responding to. I think the key thing is be genuine. Say something in the letter that you learned from your interaction with the company. Restate your interest if it's truly genuine, and thank them again for their time. And I think if you can do that in the letter, I think most people would be just fine with that. All right, so Sonia, can you read that last one for me?
I believe I think Matt was just answering to Carol's question regarding sending the thank you.
Okay.
Although I see one just popped up on my screen. Sorry, I may have a little lag here. When and what part of the job interviewing or obtaining process so at what part, if you have a disability, should you mention that or disclose that during an interview or obtaining a position?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It really kind of depends. There are disabilities that are hidden, that a person wouldn't know that you had a disability. There are other disabilities that are visual. The person that you're interviewing with is going to be able to see. And I think that if you have a hidden disability, there's not really any necessity to disclose it unless it becomes a part of your ability to perform the position as it's written. Maybe an example might be something like if I've been diagnosed with a back injury that limits my ability to lift boxes 50 pounds or more, and I see right in the job description that that's part of it, and the employer asks me, is there any reason you can't fulfill all the requirements of the position? the person at that point would probably want to say, well, I do have a disc condition, or I've had surgery on my back and I've been diagnosed as limited by 25% in my ability to lift boxes. I mean, that would be the time to disclose that, not after you're hired and on the job and you're facing lifting 50-pound boxes, and then you go and say something about it. Then that's part of, I think, what a candidate should disclose. Now, I think there's things that a person wouldn't have to disclose if there's no reason that the job description that their disability would impact their ability to do the job. They wouldn't have to disclose it at all. I'm not sure if that helps, but and that's such a broad question. A good job coach would want to dig deeper into that and figure out what the disability is and figure it out in consultation with the client and the jobs that they're interviewing for. What else? Anything else? And any questions? Not necessarily specific questions, but in general type questions.
Russ, outside of Handshake,
Yeah.
Are there any other portals or platforms that you'd recommend folks be using? I know in the higher ed world, sometimes visit the higheredjobs.com.
Yeah.
I know there are others out there. Is there anything that you'd recommend in that?
Yeah, I really think, Brandon, it's a little bit industry driven, a little. I mean, of course, higheredjobs.com, that's where our industry goes and looks for positions. But I think the person out there looking for positions should be using most of the job boards. What they will find is that some job boards just seem to work for them better than others. It doesn't mean the job board is better. It may just mean that the job board for what it is they're looking for is a little bit better. But I think you try multiples and you see where you have some luck. You see where you're getting some nibbles and some bites, and then you kind of run with that one. And so, but I think initially when you first launch your search, I think you've got to use multiple sites. And I do think that right now, I do think that in using the multiple sites, I think you just kind of you find one, you get comfortable with one, surfing the positions, you'll get nibbles, and then you trim it down. And then I think you go full blast with one, keeping some of the others alive, but you probably wouldn't spend as much time on. For instance, like the Handshake system for, the bread and butter of the Handshake system is going to be, 3 to 5 years out of college. We don't have a lot of job listings on the Handshake system for a mid-career executive or a senior executive, and that's because the talent acquisition people across the country, they sort of know that Handshake is a product that is tilted towards the entry level, and so other boards like Indeed or Career Builder or ZipRecruiter or things like that cater to a different sort of demographic and what the person might be looking for. So I think it depends a little bit, but I think with the way today's market is, you need to be on the job boards, because with the way that recruiting budgets have been cut, we think more and more the talent acquisition people are going to be on those, looking for some type of digital solution to their recruiting needs.
A couple of other questions, Russ. If you are a primary caregiver and may need to be off to handle emergencies, is that something that you should bring up during an interview process?
I'm sorry, Sonia, could you say that one more time?
If you are the primary caregiver to someone in your family and that may cause you to have to take off in an emergency situation, is this something that should be brought up during the interview process?
Well, that's a very tough question. During the interview process, I probably would not bring it up because you don't know that. See, you don't know for sure that that's going to happen. It's like a person saying, "Well, I'm thinking about going to graduate school next year. Should I bring that up during the interview process?" And see, my answer to that is no. I wouldn't bring it up because you have no idea whether you're really going to do that or not. So you wouldn't necessarily plant a seed, a negative seed, in the mind of the interviewer that might cause them to shy away from you because of something that may or may not actually happen. So, honestly, I would wait and bridge that after I was made an offer and after I had started to work. Again, every situation is different. It's difficult to answer that question with one, sort of blanket answer because it's just different. The situations are just different. What else?
We had a question asked, could you explain what handshake is for those alumni that have not used it?
Oh yeah, so those of you who may not be familiar, there's all kind of job boards out there, and as I mentioned, some of them cater to different audiences. And by the way, I just noticed some people jotting some things down, and I didn't mention LinkedIn, and it is, it's a must. It's just an absolute must for people who are serious about employment or networking. You must have a LinkedIn account and have it completely filled out, and be participating in that and keeping it up to date as you go. But yeah, handshake. There's about 4 players across the country in the collegiate market. There's Simplicity. There's Handshake. There's Purple Briefcase, and there's Grad Leaders. Those are the ones that sort of lock in on the collegiate market, and those sites all cater to the collegiate market, meaning students currently enrolled in college, and also their alumni who may open up accounts on those systems. And then of course you have the other systems, ZipRecruiter and Career Builder, and what's the other one? Indeed. There's a lot of them out there, but they all cater to a slightly different audience and have a different spin into how they get you connected with potential employers and jobs. And I think
from a hiring manager or an employer's perspective in regards to LinkedIn, how harshly or would someone be judged by the number of their contacts on their profile?
There you go, Bethany.
Well, I mean, if you only have 50 contacts, I'm not going to judge you off of that by any means. If you have 20,000, I'm going to wonder if they're actual contacts or if you're just kind of going through and adding everyone. But to be honest, whenever recruiters get a different LinkedIn format than what you see, it's a way for us to look at like keywords that might be on your profile or on your resume. They're called Boolean searches that we may, those words may directly correlate to the position that we're looking for. And whenever I'm doing those searches and looking for candidates, to be honest, I never look at their connection number. I don't think I've ever looked at that.
Yeah.
So I think you're okay.
Yeah, I think it would be just better to have your Handshake profile or your LinkedIn profile up to date and fresh and vibrant and I think that would be a lot more important. Can I actually learn something about you if I go to your LinkedIn page? What else? Anything else? So one of the things we're often asked is, and Bethany, you might be able to help me out with this one. A lot of people in the job market get frustrated with they've applied for a position and they haven't heard anything back, and they don't know what to do. They don't know whether like how much time is it. How much time should I let go by, before I follow up? And if I do follow up, exactly how do I do that? And, and so, we always say, well, whatever, like we're often dealing with students that have either applied for a position through Handshake or they've been at a job fair and they interacted with an employer. And because of that interaction, they applied for a position. And many times the employer will say, well, we're going to try to have a decision about this in the next couple of weeks. And then the student doesn't hear anything, or the candidate doesn't hear anything. And I've always said, add a whole week to anything an employer tells you, add another week, because life happens. And even though when they told you it would be 2 weeks, they meant it and they felt it was going to happen, stuff gets in the way. And so you have to give them some buffer time to respond back. But I would like your thoughts on that. And so anybody that's maybe had an application out there for 3 weeks, do you think that's too soon for them to want to find out what the status of their application is, or do you think that's about right?
No, I think that's about right. Especially if you spoke to someone at a career fair, hopefully you got their business card, so you're able to reach out to them directly and just say, hey, I applied on X day. We spoke at the career fair. I loved getting to meet you and hear about your company. Do you have any updates on the application or the interview process or the hiring decision, whatever point you're at in the interview process at that time? I think that's fine. I agree with you adding a week, because from a company and a recruiter's perspective, you don't know what could be happening. Maybe they've had a couple candidates they really like and they're trying to make the final decision, or maybe the position itself is changing, or if it's an interview process, maybe they're trying to work with another candidate to get them brought in for the interview. So that extra week is a great buffer. I would always set maybe a reminder on your calendar to email whoever the hiring manager was, the recruiter, the member of HR, whoever it was that set up the interview or that you spoke to at the career fair, just to reach out. In this market, I know we talked 2 weeks ago, Russ, but with that student, being patient, a lot of companies have changed the way that talent acquisition looks. So sometimes in some of these companies, you have people that are now doing multiple roles. So be patient with some of these hiring managers and recruiters and members of HR, because now they're having to wear a lot of different hats. And they will really appreciate that. I know I do.
Yeah, that's what we're finding too. It seems like in the job market right now, a lot of the employers have just, I call it pressing the pause button. They haven't necessarily pressed the stop button, they just pressed the pause button, and they're kind of waiting to see what you know, the next month, really the next couple days, the next week, the next couple weeks, see what that brings and how things change. And most of the employers we talk to are optimistic about the market coming back. I don't know if it'll be a V-shaped recovery, but it'll be hopefully it'll be a fairly a quick recovery. So we have another question here. 4 to 6 weeks between communications with companies. This person is saying, I've experienced a 4 to 6 week wait between communication with companies. And I really and truly, I know that seems like forever. I know when you're in the job market, I mean, 4 to 6 weeks might as well be a year. I get it. I understand. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's unusual. I think I honestly think that's fairly common. And by the way, that's exactly why I led off with it's very important to have multiple applications out there, because what I find is that person, you know, gets in that situation where they're hanging and waiting on an employer to respond back to them, and they don't keep their job search alive. They stagnate, and then when that one they've been waiting on for 4 to 6 weeks comes back negatively, it's devastating. I mean, it's you feel betrayed, and if you've got all these other applications out there, you don't feel as bad because you've already got some other things that are kind of pending. So that's why I think it's important to keep those applications going and to keep applying as much as you possibly can. So I saw another.
Oh, sorry. Kristen's mentioned that she has applied for a government position and hasn't heard back from them in about 3 months now. She's wondering if she maybe did not get the job.
Now listen, Kristen, I hope nobody out there works for the government, but man, you got to add some time to the government. I hate to say that. I love the federal government, but from a job search perspective, it's like an X factor of 7 on time waiting. I have so many stories of where the government just, for whatever reason, bless their hearts, they just don't respond in a quick way, and so I feel your pain with that, and I wish I could tell you how to speed that up, but I've been dealing with that for 28 years, so I don't know what to tell you with that, but the government does take longer, and that's all I can say. You're liable to hear from the government in a year. My son, this is serious. My son heard he's a supply chain logistics guy. He heard from the federal government over a year after he had originally applied. There was no communication, zero, between where he had applied and him for over a year. And they wrote him a letter and said, if you're still interested in the position, we're interested in booking an appointment to talk to you. And he just couldn't believe it. I mean, he said, oh my God, what, you know, he had already started his career. He had already gotten a job. He was already off to a good start. And he just couldn't believe that, that, you know, that it would take that long. He just couldn't, but oftentimes it does. Anything else? So we've kind of covered, you know, we didn't really cover prospecting for positions, but the parts of getting your job search off to a good start, you know, building the foundation, reading about the job search, understanding that you're not alone, that you're doing this with a lot of other people out there that are in the same position that you're in. I think the one thing we didn't talk a lot about is truly, and I mean truly, examining what your skill sets are. Having concrete examples of where you have performed a skill in a prior job or for some of you recent graduates in a classroom situation is critically important. Most people think they can do that until they've been asked a behavioral-based question under the gun in an interview. And then they realize that they can't respond to that as well as they would like to. And sometimes it takes stubbing your toe like that before you really start to dig in and learn how to respond to behavioral-based interview questions. But we've talked about, we didn't talk a lot about interviewing today. I didn't get a lot of specific questions about that. But we did talk a little bit about the follow-up and how you would follow up with an employer. We did talk a little bit about keeping your job search alive by applying. Job market's a numbers game, and if you only apply to 2 jobs, the chances are pretty good you're not going to get a nibble on either one of those. But if you apply to 20 jobs, the chances go way up that you're going to have a couple of people that are going to want to take a look at you a little bit closer. Bethany just sent a little thing out there, the STAR method of response to behavioral-based interview questions. This isn't something that's hard to find. You can find it on the career development website. You can find it in our career guide. If you just Google STAR method of response on Google, you'll get more than you would ever want to read about responding to behavioral-based interview questions. It is a talent. It is something you have to practice to get right. We even have a product on the career development website called Interview Stream, where you can practice interviews. All you need is Tennessee Tech log-on credentials. If you're alumni, you have to get sort of special credentials to log on, but you can practice interviewing. It's the coolest, one of the coolest pieces of software that's out there. You basically pick your occupation, and then you choose the questions you want to be asked. You press a button, and basically a person comes on the screen and starts asking you the questions that you pre-selected, and then you can respond to them and record yourself responding to the questions. And you'll find out real fast. you kind of find out real fast, how well you're responding to behavioral-based interview questions, whether your nonverbal communications are matching your verbal communications, whether you've got any energy, whether you're all monotone, or whether you're letting your voice rise and fall with inflection and things like that. And it's a great way to practice interviewing if you have one coming up. And especially nowadays, where a lot of your initial interviews are probably going to be via Skype or via Zoom. We've got the tool on our website to help out with that. Okay, so what else? Any other questions? I'm going to probably go ahead and wrap this up then. Brandon, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I was going to thank everybody for being here.
Yeah. Well, let me say a couple quick things. Sure. Anybody who is a Tennessee Tech University alumni and would want to learn more about the services that we provide, please feel free to reach out to us, because they're available to you. It's free of charge for the most part. The only time we get into any charge at all is if we have to issue you a type focus test or anything like that. And I wouldn't expect that any of you would need that, but every other service that we have is free to you. You can always come to job fairs. You can always make appointments and come in and talk with us, whether it's via a Zoom meeting or whether we ever get back to face-to-face. But that's always available to you. Resume critiques can be done over the internet via email. So please, feel free to leverage those services, and we'd like to get to know you guys a little bit better. Brandon?
All right, that was great. Thanks, Russ. Thank you for your time and giving your expertise and allowing for this opportunity here for our alumni and friends here. Thank you, Sonia, for moderating, and our special guest panelist, Bethany Beatty. Thank you for being here today and giving your advice and expertise. Folks, on behalf of the Center for Career Development and the Crawford Alumni Center, thank you all for joining us for Career Corner Live. This was our first go at it. We're really interested to hear what you have to say, what you think about it, any advice you have or suggestions or any feedback. Please let us know. And you can send those responses to via email, alumni@tntech.edu. I attempted to post a list of resources there, but the formatting went wonky before I hit enter. So there's another note in Zoom. When you hit enter on chat, it automatically posts what you're typing. So if you can sort through that resources there, there's some information there that you might find helpful. One of those is if you're interested in furthering your education during this time, you may want to visit, I suggest you visit www.tentech.edu/graduate studies. That was one of the links that I posted there. And if you are seeking an entry-level position, I do recommend that you get to Handshake. I put that portal, the link to that portal on there too, text portal to Handshake. And then as Russ suggested about LinkedIn, it's reportedly responsible for more than nearly 200,000 hires during the pandemic. So have your, as Russ said, have LinkedIn updated. That's probably number one. And then you can also find Tennessee Tech has a page there. And then also there's the Alumni Association group. It's kind of hard to search because the URLs are a little different in LinkedIn. But if you search for Tennessee Tech University TTU Alumni Association, you'll find the group there. Russ also recommended reading, and I just want to plug the Crawford Alumni Center is hosting a Tennessee Tech Alumni Book Club, open to all friends, faculty, staff, alumni, even students. And you can find that, it's a Facebook group. You can find that on the Facebook page. That is www.facebook.com/tntechalumni/. If you scroll through the post, you'll find the link to the Facebook group there. I would post that in the resources, but again, like LinkedIn, it gets a little tricky there. So Kelly, thanks for if you check the chat, Kelly's just posted the link to the Facebook group. The next book begins June 5th, and it is Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if Russ would recommend that being relevant or not, but
I recommend Malcolm Gladwell for sure.
Okay, great. So beautiful tie in there that we couldn't have planned, or maybe we could have, but we didn't know to. And then just for fun, just for kicks, this Friday night, if you follow that same Facebook page, we're hosting, Kathleen Lordo is with us too. She's our web and media coordinator, and she'll be hosting Text Trivia, which is 90s pop culture. We've been having a lot of fun. We had 70s last time, and we'll keep going through the decades. Well, I think I plugged everything. So Russ, again, thank you. Bethany, thank you. Sonia. Folks, thanks for being here. We look forward to staying engaged and staying connected with you. And there's more. Sorry, I didn't tell you when. Friday at 7 p.m. is when you can do trivia. Let's test your knowledge and see what you know. Thanks again for being here. We appreciate it. We want to hear from you. Alumni@tntech.edu. If you got any feedback, we'd love to hear it. Look forward to seeing you the next time. Wings up.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.